Now, just now we have discussed about elimination reaction and nucleophilic substitution reaction, and both these types of reactions are being shown by alcohols as well as by alkyl halides. Now, we will have the comparison between the elimination and substitution. This is because the reaction conditions which favors SN1, that is nucleophilic substitution 1, and elimination 1, that is E1. Similarly, we have SN2, that is nucleophilic substitution 2, and elimination 2, that is elimination 2. Now, what we have is the reaction conditions which favors SN1 also favors E1. And the reaction conditions which favors SN2 also favors E2. Therefore, we do not have any comparison between SN1 E2 or SN2 E1 because the reaction conditions become entirely different. Therefore, we just have the comparison between SN1 E1 and SN2 E2. But before going into that whether SN1 or E1 has to take place or SN2 or E2 has to take place, first of all we need to decide that the reaction conditions given to us, are they favorable for SN1 E1 or SN2 E2. So first of all we need to decide whether the reaction conditions are favorable for which pair of the mechanism. Now basically we have three factors which actually helps us to decide whether SN1 will take place or E1 will take place. Similarly for SN2 and E2. Now one of the factor we have is the concentration of base or the concentration of nucleophile. The second factor we have is like strength of base or the strength of nucleophile. The third factor is the temperature, and the fourth factor is the type of solvent. The fifth factor we have is the type of the compound, that means the nature of the compound. In other words, whether it is 3 degree, 2 degree or 1 degree. So basically we have these 5 factors which actually tells you about the type of the mechanism a particular reaction will undergo. Now suppose if I have a reaction conditions in which the strength of the base or the strength of the nucleophile is strong, and in that case we have the strong reasons to believe that the reaction conditions are favorable for SN2 E2. This is because in the rate law equation of SN2 E2 we have the concentration of nucleophile and the concentration of the base. So therefore either the concentration of nucleophile or the concentration of base is high and the strength of the nucleophile or the strength of the base is strong. Under these two conditions it will always be a SN2 E2 favorable condition, because in the rate law equation we have the concentration of nucleophile and the concentration of base. So therefore once you decide that the conditions given to us are favorable for SN2 E2 comparison, so after that our next job is to decide whether substitution will take place or elimination will take place. So for that we have another type of factor which I just told you, that is a degree of the compound or the nature of the reactant, that means 3 degree, 2 degree, 1 degree. Now if you see the order of the reactivity of the compounds for SN2 is basically 1 degree compound, then a 2 degree compound and a 3 degree compound. And for E2 it is 3 degree, 2 degree and 1 degree. So with respect to the degree of the compound, there is no hassle whether elimination will take place or substitution will take place, because if the concentration of the base, suppose, is high, then the reaction conditions become favorable for SN2E2 first of all. The second point is, now 3 degree compound undergo SN2 reaction the slowest, whereas the 3 degree compound undergoes elimination reaction, that is E2, the fastest. So if we are given a 3 degree compound and the reaction conditions are favorable for SN2E2, in that case E2 will take place. And similarly we can say for a 1 degree compound also. If a 1 degree compound is there, then in the order of the reactivity series, again we can see that 1 degree compound has the highest reactivity in the SN2 mechanism, whereas in the E2 mechanism it has the least reactivity. So once we decide whether the reaction conditions are favorable for SN2 or E2, then after that we see by the degree of the compound